Do not touch that dial. You are tuned to Radio Free America, the resolute, proactive, and powerful source of information for liberty-loving patriots committed to restoring our constitutional republic and living a free and empowered life. With your host, Bill Parsons.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
My name is Bill Parsons. It is February the 20th, 2025. Gosh, it's really hard to still say 2025 and not 2024. But it is the 20th of February, 2025. And the good news is today is that Kash Patel was passed by the Senate. He is going to go ahead and take over the FBI. It was a 51-48 vote. Of course, the usual suspects, Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins, voted against Kash Patel. What I would love to know, what I would love to ask them is, give me a legitimate reason. Why did you vote against Kash Patel? And I'm telling you right now, I guarantee it, that there's something dark going on here. They owe somebody a favor. They owe somebody some money. That somebody's contributed to a campaign, because there's no legitimate reason to vote against Kash Patel. He is clearly qualified for the job. He has been in positions as sensitive, if not more sensitive than that before. He was at the center of the Russia hoax collusion, right? That whole thing, Crossfire Hurricane, the whole attempt to take Trump down. He was at the center of all that. He's been a prosecutor. He's been a defense attorney. He's been in the intelligence community. The man knows his way around. He understands the job he's got to do. He's capable of doing it. And most of the federal law enforcement officers, right, that he's going to supervise. Now, of course, the 6,000 who are part of the who are proud of violating the Constitution, right, and using the FISA courts illegally, they don't want to see Kash Patel there, right? The Peter Strzok's, those folks who are no longer with the agency, but clearly did questionable things, right? They don't want to see Kash Patel there. And you could tell who the swamp, the deep state, who the gutter was most afraid of, because who did they delay the longest? You know, everybody was worried about RFK and Tulsi being former Democrats, and RFK has a pretty colorful history, you know, and Tulsi, that's who we were worried about. But it's Kash Patel who they drug their feet on the longest, obstructed the most, and tried the hardest to defeat. And it was a 51-48 vote. Of course, the two of the regular rhinos jumped ship on us, Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. Collins, I'm not saying we can give her a pass. She runs as a Republican. I understand she's in a very liberal state, in a very liberal area, but she still runs as a Republican. And on a regular basis, votes with the Democrats. Murkowski, absolutely no excuse. That woman shouldn't even be a senator. The only reason she is because they jerry-rigged, gerrymandered, messed around with the election process in Alaska and switched it from the way they had been doing it for decades to ranked choice voting. And that was enough to confuse the average voter, and she still pulled it out narrowly even then. So she shouldn't even be there. But to be a senator from the blood red state of Alaska and vote against this nominee who clearly her constituents supported, she's got to go. She has got to be unseated. We've got to beat her in the next election. Now, unfortunately, she's got 5 more years to go. So it is what it is at this point. But, you know, it's amazing that these two are regular people who jump ship on us. You know, oddly enough, McConnell voted with us this time. But the guy they're most afraid of is Kash Patel. And so Donald Trump has virtually all of the moving pieces that he needs in place now. The one nominee that he has currently, the lady he's putting up for labor secretary, and I know that Donald Trump doesn't listen to my show or listen to me, but I'm hoping some of the other voices that maybe be in his ear, right? The Glenn Becks or the Dan Bonginos or the people he does listen to, or maybe at least hears, man, she is not the right pick. This is a woman who is openly against right to work. She's not a friend of the entrepreneur or the gig worker. I don't think she fits into the portfolio of appointees that you have on the fiscal end of this thing. When you look at who he's put in Treasury, who he's put in other parts of his economic team, I apologize. This woman doesn't fit in at all, really. And I think hopefully maybe she either gets defeated. I know Rand Paul at this point is a no vote on her. Hopefully there are others, because she doesn't really fit into the puzzle at all. And I think she could inhibit some of the stuff Trump wants to do. Now, I know he can replace her just as easily as he can anyone else as the executive. But I guess the question becomes, why even start with her when you know she's not the right pick? She's going to inhibit, I think, your Treasury Secretary and some of the decisions he's trying to make. So really hope Trump rethinks that appointment, or she does not pass the Senate. So let's hope. But the good news today, of course, is that Kash Patel he is now FBI director, and that's a 10-year term, essentially. I guess he could still serve at the pleasure of the president, but it's a 10-year term. And Kash is the guy they were most afraid of, because he knows where the bodies are buried. He knows where to look. He's a smart guy, right? He's a motivated guy. And, you know, the way I look at the FBI and the way most of the people from our side of the aisle look at the FBI is one of two things. It's got to be gutted completely. And I don't mean just, I am sick and tired of hearing the talking heads on the Republican side tell me how good, I apologize, how good the men and women, the actual agent of the FBI is. It's just the top echelons. No, it's not. The rot goes from the top to the bottom. If you don't trust me, now, I was a cop for 30 years, and I work with federal agents and some of the task force I worked on. But if you don't trust me, listen to Kyle Seraphin, listen to Steve Friend, listen to Garrett O'Boyle. Those guys were all former cops and FBI agents. I think Friend was a cop in a city about the same size I was and decided to go to the FBI. Now, why a city policeman would do that, I don't know. But he did. Steve Friend seems like a solid guy, an honest guy. He seems like he's just as straight up as he can be. And how much more straight can you be than being able to say, listen, this is unethical, it's immoral, it's illegal, it's wrong, it violates our policies, and I'm going to take a stand. I'm going to lose my job, the job I valued and treasured all those years. What I was working for my entire life towards, what I wanted to be, was an FBI agent. And he had the guts, the courage to stand up and say, this is wrong. And it cost him his career. Kyle Seraphin, the same thing. Garrett O'Boyle, the same thing. And there's many others. But if you don't want to listen to me, listen to those guys. They will tell you the rot is not just at the top. It goes all throughout the organization. Now, certainly not every agent is compromised or is rotten, but a lot of them are. And it's not even necessarily that they are, I'm not saying they're criminal. Some of the behavior clearly was. But what I'm saying is they were willing to sell out the Constitution. They were willing to violate their oath. They were willing to do immoral, illegal, unethical things that violated FBI policy, violated the law, violated the rules, violated any ethical or moral standards you could possibly have so they could keep their jobs and their pensions. They were willing to put J6ers in jail. They were willing to raid their homes like they were dangerous cartel criminals. Right? They were willing to use deadly and lethal force against them. They were willing to fudge evidence, compromise themselves on the stand, lie, commit perjury, fake FISA warrants, just whatever was necessary, whatever they were asked to do by the upper echelons, their supervisors, to sack, right, the agent in charge, they were willing to do. Hey, we're going to hit that 70-year-old grandmother's house with helicopters and dogs and a SWAT team. We're going to throw in some flashbangs. Yeah, she could be dangerous. That's the kind of stuff they were willing to do. When Steve Friend questioned that, said, hey, we're violating our own policies, and we're putting people, our agents, as well as the civilian, the suspect in this case, I guess, we're putting them at risk doing it this way, when we could just probably make a phone call and have them show up at the federal building, or we could wait till they go out and get their mail, or when they go to the grocery store, whatever, and we could arrest them then. But that's not what they wanted to do. The Biden regime and the corrupt FBI wanted to make an example of each and every one of these people. They wanted it to be a spectacle. Zodiac boats and dogs and SWAT teams and armored up vehicles in flashbangs and screaming officers and dozens of officers to arrest your grandmother. Because they wanted to send a message to anybody else who had the temerity, the gall, to stand up to this communist regime that we were currently operating, this fascist regime that was in control of the United States up until January 20th. They wanted to make an example of each and every one of them. That's why they did it that way. And when Steve Friend questioned those things, he gets stripped of his clearance, gets walked out of the office, and basically is put on unpaid administrative leave. And I'll let him tell his story, but it's a great story because in his book, I think it's True Blue, is worth the read. The FBI has been a questionable organization since its very founding. I mean, J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI's whole mission, and you look at Operation Paperclip, a lot of they were tainted, the CIA, the FBI were tainted with Nazi overtones. So this has been, everybody knows for a long time, the FBI has been a suspect agency for a long time. For whatever reason, they were looked as the premier law enforcement agency. I've been around these guys. That's not what I took away from it, but is what it is. But now with Kash Patel in control, in charge, wholesale gutting needs to be done. People need to be held accountable. People need to go to jail, lose their jobs. I mean, this has to be brought under control, and there has to be real material prices to pay for the agents and supervisors who violated the law, violated the rules, walked all over the Constitution. There has to be people who go to jail and are made a public spectacle of. Because if not, this could happen again. A loud and clear message needs to be sent to the federal law enforcement agencies and our intelligence agencies, which unfortunately, and in violation, began to cross paths. Right? We had a law enforcement agency that was also an intelligence agency. That should never be, because that becomes a secret police. The intelligence piece and the enforcement piece, they need to be in separate venues. They need to be controlled by separate people. They may work together at times, right? To identify an enemy agent, these guys go make the arrest. These guys do the intel work. But when they're the same agency, which is what happened to the FBI post 9/11, man, you end up with a Gestapo, a Stasi, a KGB, any number of secret police organizations throughout history. And the FBI had become no different than them. They were using the same tactics, the same techniques. The only thing that was restraining them at this point, and it became almost like if there was a search warrant going to be served on you by the FBI or the ATF, man, it was becoming very close to a death warrant. Because if they hit your house at 6 a.m. and they're using all their SWAT tools, and you're asleep at 6 a.m. not knowing that you're even on a list somewhere, you don't know who's busting through your door. You get a gun, and it became a death warrant. And that was that was Steve Friend's, basically his question was, why are we doing it this way? This is dangerous. This is risky. This puts people, our agents as well as everybody else in the area, anybody else in close proximity, it puts them at much greater risk when that doesn't have to happen. These are not the kind of people that carry weapons, that are dangerous, that are going to resist the police. Most of them never had any criminal record in their entire life. They technically, and we all know now, didn't do anything wrong even on January 6th. So these people were low risk. These are white collar criminals. Hey, show up at the federal building. We need to talk to you and arrest you. And they would have showed up with an attorney, but they would have showed up. But the FBI chose to do it this way for specific reasons. And you and I know what those were. Fortunately, Kash Patel got passed. He was the one I really wanted to see get into position. I wanted him to be an appointee that made it through, and thank God he did. And it was by a narrow margin, one vote, essentially. It was close. It could have ended up with J.D. Vance casting the deciding vote, potentially. But fortunately, Kash got in, and now you've got Pam Bondi, who sometimes is squishy on Second Amendment stuff, but we'll see. Give her the opportunity. Kash Patel, right? John Radcliffe, RFK. I mean, you've got Tulsi Gabbard. Man, Trump this time has surrounded himself with a solid team. And you know what? I think the left, the liberals, are going to rue the day they stole the election from him in 2020. Because that put on full display what they're willing to do to destroy someone. And it gave Trump 4 years to plan, prepare, right? Get the team identified, get the mission identified, get himself solid. They thought there was no way the American public would reelect him. Well, they were sadly wrong for them and grateful for us that he won. Thank God. I can't even imagine 4 more years of Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and really Barack Obama running the show. America couldn't have recovered from that. It's going to be a tough recovery now. Donald Trump is doing, in my mind, at this point, damn near everything right. I'm not sure how you could do it better than he is currently doing it. It's just amazing. I mean, we could spend all day talking about just the wins. I mean, just think about it. This is just some of the wins, right? That I could think of off the top of my head, right? Pardoning the J6 people, pardoning the FACE Act prisoners, right? Who did nothing but pray outside abortion clinics, basically putting the FACE Act on ice. That is not going to be enforced anymore. Getting us out of the Paris Climate Accord, getting us out of the WHO, getting releasing JFK, RFK, and MLK's records. We want to find out what happened there. Hell, we've been covering that stuff up for 70 years. It's time to look into that. And I think we're going to find some really ugly stuff. Destroying DEI policy, putting an end to that ridiculous nonsense. The Hyde Amendment, right? Reinstating the Hyde Amendment. Federal dollars aren't going to be used for abortion anymore. Getting Doge in place, Elon Musk and his brilliant team of, the 19 and 20, 21-year-old revolutionaries that are going in there and using AI to uncover the just incredible, just ball of, it's like Elon Musk said, it's not an apple with a worm. It's nothing but a ball of worms, the whole place. And they're going to untangle this complex labyrinth of deception, corruption, graft, theft. It's going to be, and the AI is helping them identify it quickly, and they can move very fast, and they can unwind all these complex systems that were deliberately put in place to protect all the people who've been stealing from the American people for, well, God, who knows how long, but let's say at least 50 or 60 years. Immigration policy, building the wall, getting ICE doing what it's supposed to do, and Border Patrol doing what it's supposed to do. And crossings at the southern border are down 96%. 96%. I mean, now instead of having millions coming across, we have dozens coming across. And easy to catch dozens. You got Kristi Noem, great. I mean, she came out the other day and said, listen, if you're thinking about coming here illegally, don't. If you do come here illegally, we will catch you. If we don't catch you, we will hunt you down and we will send you back. right? So he's got all the right pieces in place. I mean, just great it's 30 days of nothing but just beating the liberals, and they have no idea what to do. Their only defense is, of course, to file frivolous lawsuit after frivolous lawsuit. And they are this is their magic bullet for them, right? They tried a real bullet on him twice. This is what they think is their magic bullet, but that's failed for them too, and is currently it's going to keep failing because Donald Trump is acting within the bounds of his constitutional authority. He is the executive officer of Corporation USA. And as the executive officer, he has the power to hire, fire, replace, restructure, whatever he wants to do. He's the boss. And he's doing that. And they're trying to say there's some limit to what his power is. Article 2 is very clear what his authority is. And the left wants to talk to us about a constitutional crisis, right? That's the buzzword. The memo went out from YAG Central, and they were all told this is the buzzword. American people won't stand for a constitutional crisis. Well, unfortunately, most Americans have never read the Constitution, even though it's as long as a pamphlet. But if there is a constitutional crisis in the brewing, it's the judicial branch that's causing it. The branch that the founders foresaw as the weakest branch, the one that had no enforcement authority at all. That's the way they viewed the judicial branch. It had no power, and the idea that some district judge could pass some nationwide edict is laughable on its face, and the founders would have totally laughed at that. The only people that judge has authority to enforce a decision on are the parties to the actual case, the plaintiff, right, and the respondent. Those are basically the only people that, when he makes a decision, the people involved in the case directly are the ones who have to abide by it. He can't just say, because in the case of Lopez versus the United States, everybody in the U.S. has to abide by this rule. Think about how absurd that is. Can you imagine that the founders would have thought, hey, let's create 500 justices at the district level who can then just create executive policy at will. We don't need a Congress. We don't need an executive branch. The judicial branch will make the law and enforce the law. Of course, that's not at all what the founders had in mind. That's why there are 3 branches. They have different authority. They can check and balance each other. But the judiciary was thought of, in the founders' mind, as the weakest branch with no power, right? To enforce the edicts they created. They made sure the judiciary could pass a decision, but they gave them no enforcement arm to enforce the decision, because that was going to be left to the Congress or the executive branch based on what the decision was about. They didn't want because if they would have given the judiciary the ability to create nationwide sweeping edicts and then given them a law enforcement arm to enforce it, they essentially would have been the rulers of the country. Not at all what our founders envisioned for us and did not want for us. So it's laughable on its face that some judge sitting in Ottumwa, Iowa, can say the whole nation, you got to stop building the fence. You can't fire federal employees. Can you just imagine if it was a company? Let's think of it like a company. The board, right? The stockholders have chosen a CEO to run the company. This person is in charge of the whole organization. They're going to set the mission. They're going to set the sail of the organization. And this is the direction we're going. And this is how we're going to get there. The executive picks his executive team to execute policy. The mid-level managers and the people on the ground level are following the edicts of the leader, and his executive team is making sure that policy gets executed. Mid-level managers are making sure the people on the ground level are doing what they're supposed to do so that this operation runs the way the executive wants it to run, right? That's why he was hired. He had a vision. And then you have a labor union step in and say, no, 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 the executive can't do that. So we're going to just stop him. He can't make policy. He can't hire and fire people. He can't choose the mission. So what's the point of the executive? See, that's how absurd it is. You pick any company, whoever's in charge sets the vision, sets the mission. They get to select personally, by hand, the executive team that serves them. And for Donald Trump, that's Kash Patel, that's Pam Bondi, that's RFK, that's Kristi Noem, that's John Radcliffe, that's his team. Just some of them, but that's his team. Those people are tasked by the president to execute policy, everything below them. He's being told he can't pick who he wants. He can't hire and fire who he wants. Right? That's how absurd it is. You actually have a judge, I think it's in Connecticut, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, one of those little tiny states, trying to tell the president of the United States that any financial decisions, hiring, firing, purchasing, stopping paying certain bills, cutting budgets, he's got to run through this judge. So this judge who sits in a courtroom in his little dark, dank place thinks he has the right to tell the CEO of the company, you can't spend money that way. You can't cut a budget. You can't fire those people. You can't freeze payments. You can't freeze hiring. And any purchasing decisions that you want to make as CEO, you got to run through me. How absolutely laughable is that? But that's exactly what the judiciary is trying to do. They go judge shopping in the First, the Fifth, and the Ninth Circuit typically, because these are very liberal courts, very liberal judges. They know they're going to find a judge who's a Democrat operative. And I hate to tell John Roberts, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, but there are Democrat judges, bud. Chief Justice, there are Democrat judges. There damn sure may not be Republican judges, but there are Democrat judges. Republican judges tend to, follow the law. Democrats just do whatever the hell they want to do, whenever they want to do it. And they do it always, every time, in a partisan way. That's why they go to these judges. These judges will say that Trump's violating a rule or a law. They just can't seem to cite the law he's violating. But in their hearts, they know he's violating the law. That's not what counts. Don't really care what you feel. Here's what the book says. Here's what the law says. And that's what you're supposed to enforce. But Democrat judges don't. And we know it. They're activist judges. Juan Merchan, activist judge. These judges are activists. They've been activists for a long time. Most, if not all of them, we've got records of them sending donations to Democrat candidates, to Democrat Party, to Act Blue. A lot of their social posts, a lot of their comments are they hate Donald Trump, they hate the Republican Party, they hate the conservative movement, they hate MAGA. So they're very clear where they stand. They are political animals when they're supposed to be apolitical. Their politics, their beliefs, their values are not supposed to interfere with their making decisions based on the law. But it does every time, and we know it. That's why they judge shop. So if there's a constitutional crisis in the brewing, which I don't think there is, because as much judicial lawfare as the left tries to engage in, they're going to get just shot down on most of it. It's not going to pass muster. They may win in an appellate court, but and this needs to get to the Supreme Court of the United States sooner rather than later. They've got to get involved. They need to shut these activist judges down. Why this has not been done a long time ago is beyond me. But these judges know what their authority is. They know where their limits are. They just ignore those limits. And they just do whatever they want to do, and they're never held to account. This is going to come to a head. And when it does, they're going to lose the case, because the Supreme Court, anybody, even a cursory reading of the Constitution, knows the president has the authority to do the things Donald Trump is doing. And the judiciary is overstepping its bounds. That's why if I were Donald Trump, I would just ignore them, go ahead and do what I wanted to do, and let the chips fall, because I know they're going to fall on my side. The left does it Joe Biden just ignores the Constitution, the Supreme Court, any court. They don't care what the courts say. They just go ahead and do it. Hey, you can't pay off student loans. Yeah, we're just going to do that. Screw you, Supreme Court. You can't. They tell him twice. You can't do it again. He just does it again. So, and because why? The judicial branch has no enforcement arm. That's where the Department of Justice, the FBI, the marshals, they're supposed to step in and say, "Ooh, you're violating the law." The court says you're violating the law. We, as part of the executive branch, are going to enforce the judicial order that's lawful. But when you work in a totalitarian government like Joe Biden's was, Merrick Garland was totally in Biden's pocket. The DOJ was in his pocket. The FBI was in his pocket. Every agency was just going to do what Joe Biden and his team told them to do. So they were ignoring wholesale the Constitution in every possible way. Republicans don't do that. We never have. Because we believe in the rule of law and know how critical it is to our republic staying strong. So these are just some of the things Trump has done, in just 30 days. I mean, literally, we could spend 10 minutes going page after page after page, one line, 50 things on each page of what he's done in 30 days. So, this is a shock and awe campaign that Trump has dropped on him. And he had 4 years to decide what he was going to do, who he was going to task to do it, and how it was going to be done. And if you've noticed, Donald Trump has gotten way more disciplined on the I don't care what you say and I don't care what you think. He doesn't get involved in little Twitter wars with people anymore. He doesn't go out and respond to every critic. Right? See, when they're criticizing you, when they're screaming and yelling, when they're stomping their feet and calling you Hitler, you're over the target. Who cares what they say? Who cares what they think? They are meaningless. Ignore them and keep moving. See, Donald Trump has the courage to be hated, the courage to be disliked. He's given up on all that. In the first administration, what did he do? 2016, he invited Nancy Pelosi over and Chuck Schumer over, and he tried to extend the olive leaf and let's work together and let's make America great. And what did they do? Impeach him twice. Lie about him. Criminally charge him. That's what they did. And I think he learned his lesson. There is no working with these people. There is no middle ground for them. They will lie, cheat, steal, and do anything because power is their motive. They like power, they love power, they want power, and when they do get it, they do know how to use it, and they use it effectively. Power is the end goal for them. They don't have any larger mission than being in power, enriching themselves. Well, you can't buy eggs, they can become millionaires. How is it that a congresswoman from Texas in 1 or 2 terms become a millionaire? How does that happen? How can you make $170,000 a year, $200,000 a year, and in 4 years parlay $200,000 a year while living in one of the most expensive cities in America, and you somehow parlay that into $9.5 million, 4 homes? How do you do that? You see, that alone should trigger a criminal investigation. I wish I could turn $200,000 into $9.5 million, but somehow I just don't seem to have the brain power to do that. I'm just not smart enough to take $200K and turn it into $9.5 million for luxury homes in the Texas area. I just don't seem to be able to do that. But Jasmine Crockett does. Nancy Pelosi does. Chuck Schumer does. AOC does. If you remember when AOC came into D.C., her first term, she was complaining that she couldn't pay her bills. Now she's worth millions. Gotta wonder how that happens. Her job is being a congresswoman. That pays $170,000 to $200,000 a year. How is she making millions? What product is she selling? What business is she running? What's being exchanged for that cash? You see, it should immediately create an ethics complaint and a criminal investigation. Harry Truman said, you can't get rich in politics unless you're dishonest. And that's a Democrat saying that, folks. Because I don't know about you, but I live in a state that's much cheaper than D.C. And I cannot turn 200,000 into 9 million. Not in 4 years, I can't. Well, I haven't been able to do it in 62 years. So it just got to wonder, where does that come from? And so those are the kinds of things that hopefully Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and all the other team around Trump, and Elon Musk, how quickly could it be if they can untangle the Fed, if they can untangle USAID, if they can untangle the Pentagon, how hard would it be to untangle the financial records of Nancy Pelosi or Jasmine Crockett or Mitch McConnell, to name a few? How hard would that be to go, where'd that money come from? Well, that's just, I don't know, millions are being brought in. And isn't it amazing how all of their stock market picks, all their financial investments are golden? I mean, they never lose money. They always make the right decision to buy and to sell at the right time. Might be some insider trading going on. Maybe Martha Stewart should be a little upset about going to jail for that, because our Congress people do it every day, and we know it. Joe Biden enriched himself for 50 years on the taxpayer dime. His family enriched themselves for 50 years on the taxpayer dime. Well, they sold America out, weakened our defenses, sold us out to our enemies, put us at great risk and peril, and wagged their finger at you and I and told us that we should use less toilet paper and drive an electric vehicle and take mass transit and eat bugs and not use so much fossil fuel, control our fossil fuel print, right? That's what's going on. Hopefully with the team Trump has around him now, and this is what's got the Democrats and the squishy Republicans worried. That's why Kash was somebody they wanted to stop, because he's the dude who will investigate all this kind of stuff. And he knows how to do it, and he knows where the bodies are buried, because he's been at ground zero for the last 10 years at least. And as a public defender and an attorney and an intelligence guy, he knows what to do and how to do it. And I cannot wait till he gets started tomorrow. Glenn Beck on the Patrick Bet-David podcast alluded to that once Kash gets officially appointed, which he now is, he thinks that in 10 days from that date or less, we will have the Jeffrey Epstein list. That'll be interesting, won't it? Can't wait to see who's on that list. Kash Patel and the FBI is where a lot of dark secrets are buried. Now, God knows what they have been destroying while they've been waiting for him to get confirmed. We'll see. J6 documents, 9/11, UFOs, RFK, JFK, MLK, Donald Trump's 2 assassination attempts, the pipe bomber on J6. I mean, God knows what's out there, what the FBI has hidden or destroyed. And we'll see, won't we? So hopefully, I'm going to reframe that. Hopefully, I know Kash Patel will do the right thing. He will be there. He's the right guy. And thank God he got picked. So the vote happened. He's in 51-48. And that's one of Donald Trump's major achievements as far as I'm concerned. I think the other thing Donald Trump is going to be, at this point, it's yet to be seen, but I think he will be remembered for this. If anything, it just depends on how things go. But AI, I truly believe, is going to be a massive disruptor to our lives in ways you and I can't even imagine. I've done a lot of research in the last couple of weeks on AI. I am no genius at it. I am no expert, that's for sure. But I believe we're unleashing potentially a Frankenstein monster that we're not going to be able to control. We're opening a Pandora's box, and God knows what's going to come out of it. I think Donald Trump, if he makes the right moves, gets the right people in play, I think Elon Musk is going to be, again, leap way ahead of a lot of these other companies that are out there in AI. And I hope he does. But Trump has to keep a tight rein on these folks, because a lot of these people that he's surrounded himself from the AI world are World Economic Forum folks. These are Yuval Harari kind of guys, and how they want to use AI. There's some super scary components to it. So I think if Trump manages this right, makes America, I think this is as big as the moon launch. This is as big as anything America's ever done. Us being the leader in AI and taking charge early and being able to manage it and having artificial superintelligence before anybody else, creating the parameters to control it, could be his biggest contribution to the world. I mean, he's already doing amazing things now. He's an incredible disruptor, which is exactly what governments need. But AI, I think, could be potentially the biggest thing he does, because I think it's going to become such a disruptor in our lives in so many ways that we're going to do a show on it, Bill and I, along with a guest who's an expert in AI, and just explore outside the box, do some thought experiments on where this leads. And I think it certainly could lead in some amazing directions. But I also think with all good comes some bad, or a lot of bad. And if we don't manage this, it could become super dangerous. The last thing I really wanted to talk about today was, it seems like the European Union, Britain, Germany, all of Europe has abandoned the idea of Republican form of government, or even democracy. I don't like the word democracy. I know what it means. It's mobocracy. But I guess it's better than totalitarianism, even though many times it leads there. But they have obviously abandoned the whole idea of free speech, of freedom, of liberty. I mean, CBS did a piece this week where they rode around with the German police. And the German police were running around in SWAT-like units, knocking down people's doors and arresting them for thought crimes, for saying things they don't like, for posting things on social media they don't like. You can actually go to jail for those things in England, in Ireland, in Scotland, in Germany, most of the European Union. Hungary, Poland, I think they seem to be, Czech, they seem to be immune currently from it. But just think about this. Germany, of all places, should realize where this leads. But then you have anchors like CBS's moron, who said that it was free speech that led to Nazism. Now, that is so idiotic, so ignorant, so disgusting to even think and say. It's so stupid, it's beyond belief. No, it's not free expression that leads to totalitarianism. It's the suppression of free speech that leads to it. You couldn't express yourself freely in Nazi Germany. You couldn't express yourself freely in communist China or communist Russia. You would find yourself in a gulag, a death camp, or just dead if you did those things. The more free speech, the better. And this is the whole point, folks, of the First Amendment. It's the speech that you don't like is the speech we have to protect. When people say things you disagree with, things that you don't like, but what do we want to do here in America? And if Joe Biden had won, if Kamala Harris had won, we would be full swing into an absolute assault on the First Amendment. You and I used to say, oh, wait a minute, that's right, I can say what I want. This is America. Joe Biden actually created and appointed someone to the thought police. They were going to troll your social media. They were going to monitor the things you thought and said, because you can't engage in thought crime. In Germany, if I insult someone, now understand, I can say something to me, I can say something to you that I don't, it's just an observation, not an insult, whatever. But if you take it as an insult, I have committed a crime. I can be arrested or fined, jailed for insulting you. If I do that online in a social media setting, well, that's even more serious, more severe, because it lives online forever. So they're trying to police people's thoughts and their language. Where do you think that leads? And of all places, Germany, obviously they have forgotten what happened 60 odd years ago. The thought police ran that country, and it got destroyed because of it. And now they are back in full swing, arresting people for thoughts, arresting people for saying words they don't like, posting things online. If you just retweet something, if I click the button that says I like that, or I want to send it on to someone else, or I comment on the post, I have committed a crime in Germany. I can go to jail for that. So obviously America, thank God, as a result of Donald Trump and his election, we are moving in a diametrically opposite position of the Europeans. While they are moving toward totalitarianism, communism, fascism, whatever you want to call it, a collectivist ideology, we are moving full steam away from it. Just imagine what I'm doing right now in Germany could put me in prison. And we've got the UK out there saying we're going to come and arrest Americans on American soil if they violate our social media policies. Let me see if I can put this correctly. To the UK, to the bobbies who would come and get me. Come and get me. I'm an American. I'm in America, and I have the right to free speech. And your laws in the European Union and the UK mean nothing to me. I'm not on your soil, and I can say whatever I want in America, and I will. So see how that works out for you here. Just incredible that they truly believe that they can suppress free speech in America from across the pond. I guess they didn't learn their first lesson in 1776. Maybe a second one is in order. They try to come and suppress free speech here. It's disgusting that they actually think that they can do that. And the European Union, through their laws and ethics, are trying to limit social media because social media companies, right, are international. This message travels around the world. As small and insignificant as my podcast is, as this podcast is, it travels around the globe because of social media. And so because I can post this and it goes to whoever somebody clicks on the podcast or goes to YouTube or goes to Rumble and watches or listens to this podcast, I have international reach. That's what's so egalitarian about it. They tried to control it, but now you and I have a voice on an international stage. And that is my goal, is to influence everyone I possibly can towards freedom and liberty and justice. How are any of those words bad? But you got European Union, you got German prosecutors sitting around the table on CBS's little special, laughing out loud. Ha 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 ha, yes, if you post something, we'll come and take your computer and phone away from you and fine you and put you in jail if it's egregious enough. The thought police. It's incredible, but that's where they're headed. And thank God we're headed in a different direction. And J.D. Vance in Munich this week let the rest of the world know America is about freedom and liberty. And it seems like the European Union and the rest of Western Europe seems to be going full steam ahead back towards fascism again. And somehow they're packaging fascism as freedom. Tough sell as far as I'm concerned, but that's where they're going. And thank God for J.D. Vance, an Ohio boy, right? Came from nothing. Now the Vice President of the United States, and a damn good one he is. And he went there and told them in no uncertain terms, America's about freedom of speech, liberty, Second Amendment, the Constitution, and that's what we stand for. And we are not going to be part of your draconian fascist thoughts, your process. We're out. Don't think that we're involved in this. And his speech was so horrible, so bad, that the organizer of the event in Munich got on stage to give his closing speech, and he wept, he cried, he needed a hug. He couldn't believe that J.D. Vance was not going to embrace their totalitarian ways, their fascistic ways. He couldn't believe it. America's in the control of freedom-seeking, liberty-loving people. He actually bawled. He cried because America's back. Had that been Kamala Harris up there, they'd have been kissing European ass and selling America out. God intervened for us, folks, and saved us from that. You and I now have a mission. We got to get behind Donald Trump. We got to get behind the MAGA movement, and we've got to make our do-nothing rhino senators and representatives do their job. And if they don't, what do? Primary them. Run for office. Vote for people different. Look at the voting record of the people you send. Don't vote for them because you know their damn name. They said this. What did they do? We got to be informed, engaged, and active. We can no longer sit back and think the experts are running things, because they're not. I think it was Ayn Rand who said it, but not sure, so I won't attribute it to her. But many years ago, I read a quote by somebody like Ayn Rand, not sure which. And it was something like this. It said, the average American thinks that government is run by intelligent, thoughtful, ethical people who sit and weigh issues and make decisions based on what's best for America. When he says in reality, what government is a runaway train with no conductor, and everybody's in the back car drinking and boozed up while the train's running off the tracks. That's what government is. And now Donald Trump, being the disruptor he is, has shown that to us in every possible way. He has pulled the bandage off a seeping, pus-filled wound, which is U.S. government, and shown us how dark and how deep and how dangerous and duplicitous it is. He exposed it for us. He brought sunshine to it. And that first time around, 2016 to 2020, I don't think any of us, including Donald Trump, understood how dark and deep and dangerous it was. How committed they were to their graft and their theft and their corruption, willing to kill for it, to keep their power and their money and their control over us. I don't think anybody understood how dark this was. That's why I chafe at calling it a swamp. It's not a swamp. It's a gutter. It's a sewer. It's filled with filth. That's what DC is. And the only way to clean that out is to expose it to the sunlight. Absolute total transparency is the only way to do this. And then we hold the people who have done it accountable. That's the only way to win this battle. And you and I have to do it. We did our jobs in November and we got Donald Trump elected. Now our job is to keep fighting. We won a battle, a big one, and we're winning battles every day. But this is a war we're in. A war for people's minds, their hearts, their souls. So we're trying to sell them the American dream again. They need to understand the Constitution. They need to understand the Bill of Rights. They need to understand where they came from and how rich and powerful and amazing American history is. How special America is as a country. How we were created differently than everybody else. And our mindsets, Europeans can't wrap their mind around America. I have a friend who travels internationally on a fairly regular basis. And he says everywhere he goes, whether he's on a cruise ship or he's on a tour or he's traveling someplace throughout Europe, and they say, oh, you're American. Are you American? Yeah, I'm an American. Man, what is your love affair with guns? They just don't get it. They don't understand at all. They can't wrap their mind around the freedom and the liberty here. It's like trying to explain the winter freeze to a summer insect. Right? Try to explain, snow and ice to a dragonfly. He's like, what? That's what trying to explain American kind of freedom, American liberty to these people is. It is so foreign to them, they cannot even begin to fathom it. And he tries to explain it to them, and all they want to do is argue semantics with him. Well, guns, they hurt people and kill people, and they're dangerous. Yeah, you know, and he tries to explain it to them logically, tries to even appeal to some emotion, and they just don't want to understand it. They have been so brainwashed. Our founders were crystal clear. Americans need to own guns so they can resist a corrupt, out of control government. When you disarm the people, they are nothing but victims. Why would your government want to disarm you? Why do they want your guns? Because they damn sure have them. And every atrocity, right? They want to talk, yeah, guns kill people. You're right. The guns in the hands of the government have killed hundreds of millions of people. When they stripped the weapons away in Germany and in Russia and in China and in Vietnam and just countless other places I can tell you, the people became the victims of their own government. And millions and millions and millions, to the tune of hundreds of millions of souls, have been lost to government violence. Their governments murdered them. They don't have to fear the people who, if it's an unarmed populace, you don't need to fear them. The government should fear the people. When the government don't fear the people who elected them, who put them in power, the consent comes from us, right? The governed. We give them the power. They don't have it, and we have the power to take it away. If we're disarmed, we have no way to protect ourselves from an overzealous FBI, an out-of-control ATF. Well, what are we going to do? And that's what happened to hundreds of millions of people all over the world. They gave up their guns, they gave up their freedoms, and they were murdered for it. That can never happen here. And for whatever reason, Europeans just will not get it. They have seen it. They have lived it. They've been victims of it, and they still can't wrap their mind around it. It's just incredible to me, but that's how deep the programming goes. So America and Europe are headed in two different directions currently. Hopefully, we can get them on board. But if not, we'll move on without them. Folks, that's all I wanted to talk about today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Friday, Bill will be back with me, and we're going to talk about government secrets like Greenbrier and other things, and how good the government really is at keeping a secret when they don't want you and I to know about it. And how do they do that? So we're going to talk about those things on Friday. I look forward to seeing you then. Stay safe. God bless you. I'll see you in the next episode of Radio Free America. Please do me a favor. Go to Apple, go to Spotify, leave us a review, leave us some stars, leave us a message. We'd love to hear from you. We're also on Rumble and on YouTube now. We're on Locals. Those are all the places you can find us. So you want to listen to us on Apple or Spotify, the best two places, or you can see us on Rumble, YouTube, or Locals. I look forward to seeing you in a new episode. Once again, God bless. Have a great weekend. See you tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to Radio Free America. Help us keep the torch of liberty burning bright by sharing the show with a friend or family member and by checking out our website at www.radiofreeamericapodcast.com. Also, take a second and give us a review on Apple Podcasts. Until next time, I'm Bill Parsons.